Agnes. And Agnes, can you please tell a little bit about yourself? And then let's start talking.
All right. About me, my life journey combines experience with technology design, human behavior, including social psychology, and then industry experience working with the large IT companies and helping with customer relationships, business development, and sales management. And also academic trajectory for 9 years, doing my PhD in socially influencing systems, then doing my postdoc at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, specifically at the MIT Media Lab, working on scaling up the influence of the urban scale, how to design transforming cities for human flourishing. And now I'm the third year as a professor of transformation in one of the business schools in France, in Paris, where I do three things. I do research and transformation, I do teach subjects related with that, and I direct program on managing artificial intelligence. And that's my academic journey now. And the second part, what I do is applied science. And that goes under the website transforms.me. It's where all the scientific work has been simplified and made it applicable for real behavioral challenges in organizational contexts, or that's a societal question, or that's health or well-being, or urban scale. So that's shortly about me, and that's what I do on a daily basis, demystifying, uncovering the essence of human change and transformation, what it means, how it actually works for the humans, and then having that knowledge plugging in to help those changes happen faster. So that's about me. And what I would suggest, I have a slide deck where I'm briefly introducing the main concept and the main work on the intersection of human change and technology design. And then I would love to spend the other half of this time for your questions, and particularly about your interest within this topic. So I will share my screen. And let's see, so I'm gonna play, so most likely you see a black screen right now. Is that true? And
yes,
then,
that's right. Mm-hmm.
And then I will run a video, and let's see if the sound goes through. So let's start it.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland. You how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So did you see the video and with the sound?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's a great example from a movie 21 years ago. So it was from 1999. And it's all about us being aware of our choices. And those who remember the first movie of The Matrix, they remember this very iconic scene with the blue pill and red pill. And that's constantly is reminding us that every single decision we are making is either contributing or not contributing to where we want to get. And when we see the world now transforming because of the pandemic, it will be our question every day today, while the pandemic is still active and there are many limitations. It's a question, how do we use time? Do we go into relaxing and entertaining ourselves, or do we just transform the way how we work and how we work with teams, or how we develop our business? So that's the basic question of asking yourself, blue pill or red pill, where do we want to go? And I will explain more in details how technologies can be also applied to that. So now it's all about building, transforming technologies and how to design them for business acceleration. And pretty much that's a combination of human behavior and social sciences and technologies. So here is a nice image which shows that there is this direct path over the grass, and there's this sign which says, please use sidewalk. And when I ask people, could you tell me a number? How many people have gone to this direct path over the grass? So what would be the usual guess? So people would say, let's say 10,000. And if we ask how many people actually build a sign, most likely people would mention just one. And this is the invisible social layer that is present in all of our experiences. And then we might not be aware why we are making the decision to go on a path instead of reading the sign and following the sign, although it's perceived that the sign gives good information. This is the reason why. This is invisible social layer that is present in all of our experiences. And if we get smarter about these unconsciously read influences, then we are better in navigating ourselves, making our own decisions, and also building technologies to leverage this understanding, how we can plug in the influences to our human behavior and attitudes. Looking back, so when people had a problem, for example, bad weather, they usually come up with a great engineering and they build a house. Next, for example, we've had a problem with not enough light and you want more light, you invent electricity. And this is the invention type of paradigm that helped us evolve. And this is one of the examples where we created more light from the old-fashioned way of very unsustainable way of light, and then into the more electricity one. And this is the example how we also can learn from the nature that tells how the transformation actually happens. It means you had one identity before, and after the transformation, you have a different identity. And when I look at this circumstance with the pandemic at the moment, I believe that it's a great time for people to reconsider their true identity, because there are a lot of distractors falling apart and falling away. And even people working in innovations and startups and building up new ideas is a great opportunity, maybe to transition from your old way of seeing things and old models to the new ones. And nature already has explained how does it work.
This is called a wheel. Now, according to its developers, it'll change the way we work and live. Why? Because it rolls. It can also be added to wagons to make moving a heavy load easier. Your opinions?
Rolls. That means it could roll away and get lost, right? Or it could roll over your foot. In square.
No square.
It was a square one. Yeah. It didn't roll. Then maybe I would think about buying one. Nice try. The wheel.
So I showed this example to remind that while good innovators and creators might come up with extra, unordinary ideas, it might be the cultural or situational conditioning might be ruining these ideas quite harshly. So therefore, this is another reminder that while we will look at the different world after the pandemic, and there will be people coming up with the new ways of dealing with business, dealing with traveling, dealing with the teamwork globally and so forth, be very aware that it's easy to kill good ideas. And that's the reminder for that. So now moving on, and as a last example from this tendency that we create innovations and we want to overcome distances faster and we invent a car, again, we always need to look back how we humans are using these innovations. And this is what I mean about products and services and experiences, whether they actually are perceived the way that the designers expected. Maybe some of you have seen this video before, and obviously it's an example where human behavior is not performed as expected. So if you pay closer attention, you see that there's a car, there's a gas station, and there is one human being trying to fill up the car. But when you pay closer attention, what kind of car it is, you see it's Tesla. And then you know it's fully electric. And it signals to us that we sometimes have habits and the rituals so deeply ingrained into the mental models that it might take some time to overcome those. And the same, I think, happened with the pandemic right now. It's that, let's be frank, we had platforms to communicate. We had platforms to do teamwork online, but they weren't used to the extent they're used now. And that's one big good transformation that has happened. And I think it will not roll back to where it was before. Summing up this first introduction about how to get from where we are to where we want to be, and many times people design technologies and put them in the hands. So therefore, I would like to show another example that not always all of the innovations that are put into the hands for the people are bringing actually great results for them. So the older guy is a road you can drive a car on. And the younger person is a driver. And this is a social campaign. It was intentionally recorded. You understand why. And the question is, how do people make decisions in different circumstances? And the same also applies to the circumstances we have today. And as I previously said, so people can just entertain them, or they can maybe shifting their focus. If they were in some of the jobs that were previously very demanded and now they are not, it's a time for reconsider. This example shows that we need to be very careful about every single decision that we are making. Speaking about decision making, it comes from our brains, and brains predominantly have these two parts, and they were discussed in the book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. So thinking fast is the system one, which is red in this case, which is instinctive, reactive, impulsive, emotional, and intelligence is this thing that has evolved with us human beings and make us different on this planet, which is about rational thinking, logical, analytical, and so forth. And in the previous example where the person picks up the phone instead of looking on the road and actually driving, gets into trouble. And the question is, why there was this kind of bad decision-making process? So the survival brain didn't give the survival chance for the person. An intellectual part of the brain would say, oh, it's not a good time to use the phone. So we need to understand a little bit more about brain function to also be more capable of designing for the brains of the users that are later using systems. Here is an example about product. Why I'm showing is because it will also show easy ways how you can design for significant human behavior change. If you're asked, what's in this box? There should be a product. So instinctively, the red part of your brain, the system one, would definitely go for the TV first because there is an image of TV on the box and the box looks like there could be a TV in it. And then when the rational brain slowly joins the conversation, it looks like, well, but there is also this bike image on the box and there are these bikes in the background, so it might be a bike. So the actual answer is, there is an electric bike in the box. So the next question, what the logical part of the brain asks, why there is this image of TV on the box? And there is a good reason for that. And this is a business company. It's a real business. And there was, imagine there was this meeting with the managers. And there was a sales manager, marketing manager, CEO, financial manager, and human resource manager. And one person just stands up and says, oh, we cannot do our business anymore like this. We need to do something. Let's put this image of TV on the box. And when I asked this for the audiences, different kind of audiences, there are good answers coming back. For example, they say, oh, because the bike is electric and TV, and maybe there's a connection about the progress into more comfortable technology-driven tools or experience in our lives. Good guess. The people say sometimes, oh, maybe when you ride bike more often, maybe you get the TV as a present or as a reward. Also a good guess. But again, it all comes from the perspective of the end user. Let me give you a hint. This image wasn't put for the end user. It was put for some other audience that is into this chain from producing to the end user, and not to give you any more longer waiting time. This image was put for a specific group of people that are in this chain. And those are people delivering these bikes to the end user. And now you have most likely this aha moment. Ah, yes, it's because they're handling these boxes. The problem for the business was they had 30% of their bikes damaged on delivery, 30%, huge loss for the business. And they don't want to keep it. And they realized it's because the handlers, as they use the instinctive brain, they see, oh, that's a bike, there's a box, and in the box is a bike, and therefore the bike is not fragile. So we can handle it with less care, and that's why the damage happened. After they put a TV on the box, guess what? From 30% damaged on delivery down to 5. One simple environmental design change reaches that significant decrease. And why? Because instinctively, people look at the box, it looks like a box for TV, and the image is there, and they think it's a TV, fragile. And as they change their attitude towards the box, they change their behavior and they handle it with care. So this is how tiny design elements, but very specifically chosen and designed, have very huge effect on the human behavior. This is another one. This is how people have invented a new way to paint the crosswalk. And when you look at the crosswalk, it looks like concrete blocks on the road. And again, it's just a 3D printing, and that's in Iceland. But then again, for the instinctive brain, if it looks like a danger, people driving cars will press the brake without even waiting for the intellectual brain to start analyzing the design or the print of those on the surface. So that's how you can actually pierce through our usually overused intellectual and rational part of the brains and get straight into the instinctive one, which is much faster and much more reactive. So designing using that in mind always would give your attempts to change people's behaviors more significant outcomes. To summarize understanding about our brains, this is one of the examples I usually show, also to remind that people sometimes live in delusion that our brains are perfect. And of course, we know some of the books in the bookstores that says optical illusions. And then I know one person that I watch on YouTube says, instead of naming them optical illusions, they might call these books brain failures. But let's look at this example. There are two squares, A and B, and the question is whether the color of the both squares, A and B, are the same or different. So if you first glance on that, most likely you would say the color is different. But then let's move the colors around and see how that's play out. Now you see it was different, and then same. And then there's a question. So what's really happening? So we do it again. Again, it was kind of different, but again, the same. To solve the puzzle, let's build a connection. And now they are the same. And now the brain says, oh, what just happened? So for the clarification, let's put these two images next to each other. So you can look on the left and you kind of feel they're different. You look to the right and they are the same. So that's an example to explain our brains are not perfect, and also knowing that if we use the understanding and we design with that knowledge, the successes of our solutions are much greater. So in the end, summarizing this introduction to the transformation, always or many times people say the transformation is actually difficult. So it's difficult to change yourself, to change your life, your habits, and then it's difficult to change your team or your organizational behavior. But what I'm saying is the transformation is just not understood. So once we understand things, then we can actually put them into the practice. And this is what I do. Like demystifying and simplifying transformation and putting it into practice.
All right, so I'm gonna leave and then I'll come back, okay? So you can either eat it right now or you can wait. Either way, okay? Okay. How'd you do? Did you do good? You did? You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So did I tell you to give you another one? Okay, now you can have both. You need them.
So this is an introduction to where we constantly look for external motivators to keep people doing certain things. So in this case, it is quite a famous study, marshmallow experiment, where kids could have one marshmallow right away, or they could wait for a certain time, I don't remember, 5 or 10 minutes, and they would get the second one. And of course, most of the kids would just eat one, but you see that some of them, they were really trying to wait to get that reward. So it's nothing about like a long lasting change, like a transformation, but like a very short benefit if you really wait for a little bit. So this workaround and ideas how we can design for human change has been around for decades. And this is one example where in Moscow Metro, they could get a free ticket for the underground if they do 30 squats. The same they also applied in Mexico City. And in Dubai, they offered 1 gram of gold for every citizen that reduced their weight. For every kilogram, there was 1 gram of gold. So all of these attempts to change human behavior, in this case, to get them healthier, they have a good intention, but there's one problem, and you see that problem on the screen right now, and that's the ticket. And the ticket is in a form of reward. So people are quite naturally reacting to the rewards because that's kind of historically have been overused in different areas of the business, marketing and human resources as well. So how you can get the people do certain thing, you either motivate them by reward or punish with a stick if they don't perform. And the problem that I discovered in the research and also in the practice, if you want an innovation to be accepted by people and actually used, of course, you can expect that people, when they learn about new behavior, new way of living, for example, after pandemic, and then you motivate with carrots and sticks, it might not have a long-term effect. So if you really want people to get going the direction you want, then from any innovation that you bring to the market, it has to go directly to the people accepting it, saying, yes, that's something meaningful for me. And from the acceptance to the intention, which means after they find the meaning for themselves, they have to have an intention actually to use that in their lives. And then after that, only then the behavior can happen. So that's the journey, very essentially and scientifically proven. If you really want to succeed with introducing a new way of work or new way of teamwork, even the distant one like today, and getting the benefits out of that, that's the journey you have to lead your team through. Or if you work with the customers, the same way. If you want this new way of them dealing with whatever is your product or service, and you propose it as an innovation, that's the pathway you need to lead mentally your users or your consumers through. And then instead of punishments and rewards, I offer this example and this approach. The person in the middle is a regular person. The other people stepping in an elevator are scientists. And scientists intentionally face the back of the elevator, which is unusual behavior and not common. And you see what the ordinary people do. They follow the other behaviors. And that's called social influence. Social influence have been proven, at least in my work and in many other examples, to be much more effective and much more perpetually available because we have other people around, and much more natural for us because we instinctively react to other people instead of these, to some degree, artificially created carrots and sticks. Another example in California about electric cars and owners of the electric cars. So of course we know that they're clustered more around those areas where you can purchase them, but not only the purchasing heat map shows the clusters, but also where the owners of the electric cars live. So the location of where their houses are also clustered, which means you see the neighbor has the car and there are 2 neighbors having the car and 3 neighbors having the electric car, you're more likely to purchase. And that's the fundament of social influence playing out. Here's another example from airport in Amsterdam. And people were able to sit around, high table, and by sitting down, there was pressure sensors and every seat that was taken was bringing the table down. And it tells these are all strangers flying to their own directions through the airport. But as a social influence is present in us and always very actively operating, it brought these strangers together around the table. That was a social cooperation to get the table down. So there are different innovations which are really exemplifying that instead of just purely designing one app and giving it into the hands of the people, the most powerful way to achieve sustainable change in human behavior, which I call social transformation, people is the essential source of motivation for achieving that. So therefore, here I'm introducing typology of change. Sometimes people are getting lost. They say change, 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 and they think it's the same thing. No. So by definition, there are 3 types of change. The first type of change is transaction, which means you exchange, for example, your money for a gym membership. That's a one-time thing. It doesn't say you're going to go to the gym. But then if you really go to the gym, you get into the next type of change, which is transition. You have a period of time which has an endpoint. And you might go to the gym 1 year, and then you might not extend it for the next year. So therefore, there is this psychological barrier how to actually get people going after the deadline. And for that, the transformation is the third type of change. And the difference between transition and transaction is that transition has an endpoint, transition has an endpoint, transformation doesn't. So you remove the endpoint, which means it changes from a line to an arrow, which I call vector, and I'll explain about vectoral transformation in a moment. So generally speaking, if you really want your market or your employees to sustain a new ways of behavior at your workplace, or your users to be consistently visiting and using your products, you need to understand if you will use carrots and sticks, rewards or punishment, you will get only short-term effects, and you will constantly need to give them out, and you will need to maintain them, which is an extra energy from your business. But at the same time, if you will design your user experiences using social influence, how your other users are behaving, how many times they come to your service, how frequently they use, what specific parts of your offering they're using. And if that data is interestingly and easily to be displayed for hesitant users, that would be the best motivation you can get. And you see the top corners. So you see under the carrots and sticks, it's artificial, and it is artificial to our biological natural reaction. It's outside of us. So the reward and punishment is external motivators. While the humane part, which is social influence, which is influence of other people, is how we constantly change what we think and do based on others, it's humane. Because if you see, for example, on one occasion, people start running on a street, and most of them do, you naturally feel you also are kind of willing to run even without understanding why. And this is why this social influence is the most powerful way. So I just spoke about vectoral transformation, and this is just an example where I spoke about flourishing cities. And flourishing cities can be replaced with any target you want to achieve. For example, you want to achieve great teamwork over the continents, or you would like your company to be making sustainable products, or that your target would be hyper performance for your employees. Whatever you put on the green arrow, that's your transformation arrow. And then these other arrows, the yellow and the red ones, are actually leading to different directions, which is away from your target. And the problem is that people, even if they decide, oh, I'm gonna change either myself, or I would change my team, or I would change my company performance, and they draw this green arrow where they want to go. But then as they go, sometimes there happen a day when something changes in the decision, just for a one time. You see this green goes and then it flips away. It moves away a little bit from the arrow. And that's how people get into the delusion that, oh, I'm still going the direction I chose before. And then it's just this one time when I'm not gonna comply. But in reality, geometry doesn't work like that. So once you have decided at least one time to move away from your trajectory, you land on a different arrow. You can see from this example, the red thing is moving, and then once you step away, you're moving different direction. By the way, this is a tool that you can use also for your personal changes. So you can try it out yourself for a 1 week or 2 weeks. How does it work? You put your own personal change you want. You draw this first, the long arrow, which is your transformation arrow. For example, you want to read more books, or you want to exercise more, or you want to eat more healthier, whatever that is. Or in this case, for the pandemic, you wash your hands, I know, 10 times a day. And then you need to draw other arrows. And on the other arrows, you need to explain that it's a different outcome. For example, if on the green arrow, you will wash your hands 10 times. Then on the yellow arrow, it's you wash your hand 8 times. And then on the red, it might be you wash your hands 6 times. And then on the same on the other end. So therefore, and the other end could be that the green arrow says you wash your hands 10 times for 30 seconds each time. And then if you move away from the green arrow, like downwards, it would be on the yellow arrow, it would say you're washing 10 times a day, but for 20 seconds. And then the red arrow below would be you're washing your hands 10 times for 10 seconds. So, and this is how you deviate, and this is how you kind of get into delusion. If you understand how this vectoral transformation works, you pretty much can easily change your own life and then change life context within your organizational behavior, your people that you're working with, either internally in the company or externally. These are great scientists, and most of the work that I'm going to show later is based on that. So social psychology by Albert Bandura, that's from the Stanford University in Palo Alto, in Stanford. And behavioral economics, Daniel Kahneman, I mentioned the book Thinking Fast and Slow. Neuroscience, that's a very timely topic right now, and actually correlation between the behavior and neuroscience is getting more and more understood slowly. Technology design by BJ Fogg. He still runs his behavior design lab at Stanford University. And decision making by Miles Kilgore. So combining all of this work together, I have brought from the science transformation framework to be applicable for organizations if they want to deal with human behavior in a very effective way. So first of all, you see 4 tools, 1, 2, 3, and 4, triangle, curve, metric, and circles. And the 4 tools out of 8, they are dedicated to find the root cause. So what causes these people to misbehave? Why these people are not performing as you want, whether employee performance or whether the users are not following your products and services the way you want. And it's so essential to figure out the root cause, because quite often there are innovations proposed without understanding what they are solving, and therefore they fail. So therefore I put this reminder about the Fight Club, and those who have seen the movie, the question is, what's the first rule of the Fight Club? And those who have seen, they know the first rule of the Fight Club is you do not talk about the Fight Club. So for the first 4 tools in the transformation framework, you don't talk about solutions. You look only for the root cause and the context around it. So why the behavior is not happening, and you figure out that. After that, 5, 6, and 7, those are when you start designing. And this is the architecture, when you have the data layer, intelligence layer, and transformation layer. Then you use social influence, which is tool number 6, about 7 dimensions, how individuals react to others and change. And the moderation, and of course, finally, ethics are very important if you build influential using user experiences. Let me give you an example of what we did at MIT Media Lab, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, we worked with the 14 companies and their employees and how they commute to work. So that's real context, real people, real workplaces, and real commutes every day. So we didn't look at how they commute elsewhere, only commutes to the work and back. And we arranged this study called Biking Tourney, and we looked how people would change their mobility modes based on the transparent, instant feedback about how their company is performing in the ranking. And the ranking was based on how many people ride bike from each of the companies, how many miles they ride collectively as a company, and also whether there is an increase of the people joining this bike riding during the study. So for the 6 weeks, 14 companies in Boston, greater area, participated, and every company you see in the images in the background, they were seeing this biking tourney as instant reflection of how people arrive to work and whether they add miles, how many miles, and how the ranking changes dynamically next to the other TVs showing news and stuff like that. And this was great because in 6 weeks, there were 240 people, and together they rode 30,000 miles. And that was a great proof for social influence, which in this case is cooperation within the company to get your company higher in the rank. In the ranking, it's a competition. And the third out of the 7 social influence principles was social facilitation, which means it's happening right now with your company and other companies in the close neighborhood. So it's not something 2 years ago in Australia. This was really in Boston, happening, Boston and Cambridge at that very moment. So achieving great results. And then a little bit insights to this essence of the tool number 4. We can have people that are already doing the right behavior, which means, for example, washing their hands 10 times a day with the 30 seconds. Self-contained say, oh, I'm never gonna do that. And they say, if we speak about smoking, they say, I'm gonna smoke until I die. And the yellow circle in the middle says January 1st. They are willing to change, but not always succeeding. So what we need to do, we need to open up the awareness, exposing the green people, which are good performing people, to the yellow, which are hesitant. And then this social influence, which I explained, is pulling these people towards becoming greener, which means becoming better performance of that behavior. As they are gravitating toward the green side, their identity changes and they actually experience internal transformation in that particular behavior. And then they join the circle of influencing others. And as you remember, I previously criticized carrots and sticks as being limited in their effect. So they still have their location to deal with the red people. So sometimes if we really want in our company to keep some of the people that are not really willing to, for example, to support your innovation policy, or they don't want to get to the new platform or product, you still can use carrots and sticks to motivate them at least to become a little bit more orange and hope that they will get yellow. By the way, this tool is very handy when you really look for people who are dragging your business behind. That means if everyone is changing with the circumstances, and even in this case, if you see that some of your employees are actively continue working, even from their homes, and being productive, they are green. Then there might be some people whose performance dropped a little bit, but they still say, yes, it's a great way to do it. We still need to do it. And those are yellow. And there might be people that are red, which says, oh, I have all of these reasons why it's impossible to work remotely. So unfortunately, life after the pandemic will still have a large portion of teamwork, which is remote. And that's, I think, is a new world where if before it was quite a question, where can I work from? I think it will be very acceptable and becoming a new norm to work like that. And if people are still red in this matter and they say, oh no, I need to have the office, I need to do all of that. So sometimes you could still use the carrots and sticks to convince them. But then if they don't change, those are the people to be laid off or let go. So basically that tool also helps to manage your employees and to see the effect, how social influence can transition from the crowd to the one person and back to the crowd. you can see this example. The lady in the purple is a regular person. All of the other people were recruited by the scientists. And on the beep, they stood up. And now there's nobody, and there's a beep, and the regular person just stood up because learned the behavior. These are other regular people coming in for the eye test. And let's see. So the person who was previously not knowing what to do on a beep learned from the group that was recruited by scientists. And now after that, she passed on that new behavior to the rest of the people, which are just the regular. So this is the power of social influence, which is oftentimes not used to the degree that is actually possible. This is an example on a Longfellow Bridge that connects Boston downtown and MIT campus. And then we imagine these technologies as an instant feedback of how fast cars go and how fast bikes go in the last hour. And again, if we don't have this technology feedback, transforming technology that actually showing us actual results, we don't know, and we make our decisions based on our assumptions. But when we have this kind of displays, then people realize, oh, this is what's happening. And I, instead of sitting in a car in the traffic, actually can take a bike next time. And then we work on a different other innovations, like this one is called persuasive electric vehicle. So it shows how you pedal or use electric assist. And then it informs not only about your behavior, behavior of previous other riders to get the social influence on you and change your mind so that you use more pedaling. This is an example where you can see that technology designers have implemented interactivity for both parts of the brain. So the eyes are speaking to your instinctive part of the brain, the red one, and then the lights are speaking to the intellectual part of the brain. And that's a good combination to show that. Another example about how people might get to the groceries and if they're considered about eating more healthy, this is an opportunity to reflect which products are more green, that means more healthy, and red. I don't insist that exactly this labeling is correct in every place, but that's the way how technology can be used to instantly inform people about their decisions, whether they're helping them or not. Another study that we implemented for these kiosks called Higi, people at these kiosks can measure their blood pressure and weight. And based on these metrics, company wanted to engage more people to become registered users instead of being anonymous users. And then, of course, when people sit at the kiosk and enter their age and gender, pulling out from data other users that increase their health by having the account actually was proved to be very effective. So that we had conversion rate of 20% for the total group where the kiosks had this message about other similar users improving their health because they're having accounts. And then also for specifically weight concerned group, there was a 32% conversion rate increase, just based on providing data about others similar being successful in the same way that you want to be successful. So purely social influence, no carrots, no sticks, just showing the example of other people. And this will be the last example for today. It's quite common behavior that sometimes people experience in offices. And you see there was the 65% increase to 100. And the question is, what was that? So people arriving late to the meetings. And again, in the old world, that was physical meetings. And in the new world, it's online meetings like today, like Zoom. And I think if people are arriving late, there are a lot of distraction because people joining late, they don't know what was spoken before, or maybe everybody waits. And this is kind of ruins the efficacy of the meetings. So therefore, in this case, in the first meeting, they were 65% on time. And then after 5 meetings, they were 100% of time. And so the question was, what was implemented? And you see on the right upper corner, these bars with the color coded, like with the colors assigned to each bar, different colors. And there was this red marks in the top. So every bar is a one person. And if the person was on time for the meeting on that day, the person gets the color. And if the person was late, the person doesn't get the color. So you see some of the people have these blank spaces between their bar and the top mark, the red mark. And that was the reflection, instant reflection for every meeting, and everyone in the meeting room on the screen could have it. And the same can be implemented now using in parallel with the Zoom or other platforms. So how people arrive to the meetings and everybody see themselves and others. And again, there is no positive incentive, no reward, and no punishment. It's just seeing other people. In this case, after 5 meetings, everyone was on time. So it works very impressively. And for this particular case, it was technical implementation, very simple. There was a computer marking who is on time and who is not, and seeing that on the screen right away. So summarizing the effect of the transformation, if person or the company is the same throughout the year, 365 days, the result is the same. If there's just a 1% increase every day, mathematically, you get 37.78. And the opposite, if your performance or the performance of your team or your company is 1% less every day than you could be, this is what you get. It's a 0.03. So transformation is huge effect. And this is my website, 3 TEDx Talks. There are different other things and inspirational blog posts and also tools. You can download tools. The framework is available there. And what else? There are scientific literature as well. So if you're interested in that, you're welcome to visit transforms.me for more inspiration and regular updates about transformation and demystifying it. So I can, I think now it's time to answer your questions. And then within the questions, I also can highlight some of the new topics that I am now including to this transformational science.
Hi there, can you speak? Okay, Julia? Yeah, go ahead.
I really liked the talk. I don't have a question specific to the talk. I really enjoyed it. But I think one of the things could be that it's given me an inspiration to maybe do the neuromarketing course on Coursera that I saw, because it's really interesting.
Neuromarketing is a nice term, similarly as gamification. So gamification is essentially rooted into the social psychology, but it's much more attractive to speak about gamification. And also neuromarketing, it's again nice way to combine, of course, neuro understanding or neuroscience to some degree and plug it into the marketing context. But by definition, it goes down to the basic operation of human beings, which is making decisions. And yes, so the same decision-making related sciences are very well discussed and presented into the neuromarketing labeled work. So yes, thanks for sharing.
I just want to say thank you very much for this amazing talk. It's really good, and we will transmit it at 7 p.m. tonight as a live streaming too, to make sure that everyone has seen it, whoever registered. And also, my question is, in this new COVID I would call it post-COVID-19 society, where everyone is jumping from each other in a fear that we'll get a virus. The behavioral patterns will probably change dramatically, and there is no research to it yet. It will be like a new paradigm for everyone. We can probably create a predictive models for it, but we can only predict, but what the reality will show will be probably entirely different. And my question is, how do you see what, based on your insights, where do you see people need when it comes to businesses? Let's put it on this way. When it comes to businesses and people starting interacting and walking on the streets, what do you see will change in terms of interactions? What does change when people start interacting in a post-COVID society?
I would say that if we speak about business context, and I already touched this a little bit, we wouldn't experience that much business traveling. That's, I think, so obvious now. It's like, I know people say in big airports like Frankfurt, there is this idle runways and there are idle airplanes sitting there. And it's just a great reminder, because there are cases when people are flying in for a 4-hour meeting, and they're flying in from different locations. And after this COVID time, I think none of these will repeat again. And people will be, in their behavior and in their attitudes, will be so much accepting all of the online teamwork. So whatever platforms they're choosing, it would be just a huge attitudinal shift, and there wouldn't be barriers for doing that. And of course, it's great for planet. So if there is a less CO2 emissions by the aircraft, and also the other, at the same time, it will play, let's say, the opposite way on the businesses that are hosting guests, possibly, and also on the airline business. But I think it's just about businesses accommodating this change. I think behaviors in terms of business traveling will definitely not be back to the regular, and the use of the technologies for online communication and teamwork will have accelerated, and will keep on going this way.
Right. Well, that's true. But then what I caught myself on is, and maybe I'm just old generation, but like when I'm trying to do networking, right? The people online, I don't have that personal engagement with them because I don't see the eyes, or I don't see how you react. Whereas when I'm in a meeting, in a face-to-face meeting, I can touch, I can see the reactions, the emotions, ask about children. Where when I'm in an online meeting, I have 1 hour in and out and I'm done. So there is no post-meeting engagements. So you are losing that humane factor of the society.
It's a great observation, and I've heard similar questions in my talks right before the COVID.
It's just like this being human, being more kind of helpful to the people who are in need, right? We're in business, we're doing in and out, we are moving on, and because you are so isolated, you don't see the pains of others. I mean,
I see. I hear what you're saying.
And then when you are talking with people on planes or in trains and anywhere else, you interact with strangers. You know you'll never see them, so they're kind of your confidants or whatever. And now you lost it all.
Yes, it's lost. That's the big transformation. And the good news is every human being, by definition, by their, I sometimes refer to it as a transformation gene. So in our DNA, as we have been evolving throughout the thousands of years, we have seen so many changes of ourselves and the things around us, and huge transformations that everyone on their basic DNA level understands what the change means. And if they want, they can do any change they envision or desire. So therefore, right. I have now already published a few posts on transformation gene, so for those who are interested. But basically it says, while we have been conditioned that if we want to change, there has to be an outside force, like right. punishment or reward, it has misled many people, and also overcrowding with the busy lifestyle didn't give a chance for people to stop and think, actually, can I do it myself? And therefore, we kind of automatically, reactively look for outside forces to help us. But the good news is we have this transformation and we can change whatever we want. And I have my own 3 transformations. I have seen other people doing it. And the good news is once you have activated that gene, it just naturally shines out and mirrors, and it speaks to the other person's gene and wakes it up, which is a great way to change it. But coming back to what you said is, we didn't have phone earlier. We
Right.
didn't have smartphone. And those were big shifts in how we interact. And although we miss what we had, so we miss that interaction, random interaction in the airport, random interaction on the plane, we will find a comfortable new way of getting what we want. And I can just speak about my own experience. I have become more relaxed with performing the same casual conversations over the platforms, even with strangers, and just being myself and putting it out. And if I want, if there's a topic which is not business related, but it's important to me, I'm speaking it out. And then of course you can see the same way as a person sitting next to you in an airplane. If they don't
Right.
want to speak about it, they won't. And if they see that you are human being opening up, and that mirrors immediately, it speaks to their like humane genomes and they speak back, yes, I hear you. And then you can get the same or similar like quite similar experiences also in this new world of distant communication.
Distance. No, yeah, it's definitely changing. Okay,
Yeah.
Agnes, it's time. So thank you very much for today. And like I said, we'll restream it at 7 o'clock tonight Pacific. And I hope you can come back and talk more.
Sure. Yes, that's my aim.
Thank you, Agnes.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.